Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I still have three Vincent Price films to get to, but I figured just to break it up a little bit, even though I have a bunch of random films to do, figured why not start my next marathon, which I was supposed to do a while ago, but I jumped into Vincent Price first. But that is the marathon of Alfred Hitchcock, because I got the House of Hitchcock box set after Christmas. And I did do a video going over everything that's in this box set, so check that out. And yeah, I know Hitchcock isn't really straightforward horror. He's the master of suspense and thrillers. Kind of horror. He's done a couple horror films. I mean, he's done Psycho, my third favorite film of all time. And what's crazy to think about is, for as long as I've been watching movies and horror films, the only Hitchcock film I've ever seen was Psycho. I've never seen The Birds. I've never seen any other Hitchcock film. So this is a marathon I'm actually really excited to do. And I figured I would start it with the one that intrigued me the most, which is not The Birds, but Rear Window. And yeah, the box set comes with these little cards of the original poster, so that's going to help with the thumbnail. Because they all come in Blu-ray cases, which when you put them together, you get him holding the Psycho. I've already done the video of what's in it. I just love this box set. Rear Window came out in 1954 and is one of the several films Hitchcock did with Jimmy Stewart. Which, even before this, the only Jimmy Stewart film I've seen was It's a Wonderful Life. Because I had to watch that every Christmas. Which, it was always on NBC, so it was always like 9 hours long. Because they always have like a commercial every 2.5 minutes. Anyway. But Rear Window, I've really wanted to see for a long time because this is a very, very influential film. I mean, a lot of, filmmakers, film historians, and scholars, and fans, and audiences, and critics consider this to be one of his finest films and the favorite of many. Of course, I'm always going to say Psycho. Psycho is always going to be my number one. But I see why this is such a beloved film. I would say this one is definitely the most Hitchcockian that I've seen so far. Of course, I've only seen two. But it's influential because a number of films have, it kind of created a formula. The damn, it's right there too. I guess the voyeur type film, especially when it deals with like a neighbor or someone close by. Because I mean, this came out 5 years before Peeping Tom, which definitely goes into the more darker side of voyeurism, but it got a remake in the 90s with Christopher Reeve after his accident. The Shia LaBeouf film, Disturbia, is like a younger, prettier version of Rear Window. Like the CW version, PG-13 version. Even Fright Night from the 80s. The beginning of Fright Night, it's Rear Window with a vampire, essentially. The plot of someone who's more or less confined to this one area. He's checking on his neighbors through his window and finds out one of them has a dark secret. And in all these cases, Fright Night, it's a vampire, but in all other cases, it's that he's a murderer. I think Disturbia tried to make him sound like a serial killer, this, I didn't really say if he was a serial killer, or I'm pretty sure it was just the guy's wife. But Jimmy Stewart plays this guy, J.B. Jeffries. He's he's a photographer for this magazine, like a Time type magazine. And when we first see him, we get this great shot where we pretty much know about his life through just visual exposition. And that's another great thing about this film, is that, Hitchcock, coming from the silent era, and, he's British, but he learned from the two biggest filmmakers of the silent era, which was the Americans and the Germans. And the Germans, German Expressionism, is all visual. And so he really knows how to visually tell a story. So we get this panning shot, which I love panning and tracking shots. Especially, my favorite one is the back entrance to the Coca Cabana on Goodfellas. I love that shot. But in this, we see Jimmy Stewart. He's sleeping in his wheelchair. It pans down, or it starts on his leg, I think, and it pans up to show him. Goes over to like a desk. We see a broken camera. Then we see these framed pictures of like a race car coming at him, race car blowing up. So we kind of get the idea that's what happened to him. Pans over a little bit more, and then we see like a fashion magazine with this woman who is Grace Kelly, who's his love interest. So, and it really just sets up who the character is with no words, one shot, all visuals. And I thought that was fantastic. And Grace Kelly is really known, like, a lot of people give credit to Marilyn Monroe for being the most beautiful actress ever. But from what I hear, people, and I have to agree, Grace Kelly, like, film historians talk about her, like, in this movie particular, as being the most angelic, beautiful woman to ever grace the screen. And I would have to agree, especially since, her introduction to the film is done in such a way that Hitchcock kind of reveals her almost like an angel. She enters Jimmy Stewart's apartment. It's kind of dark. You can just tell you can see her dress, her blonde hair. You can tell who she is. But she walks around kind of in the background. She's explaining something. And then just the way she comes into frame, he just kind of pulls in on her as the light illuminates her face. And it's a very effective shot. And, we kind of get the idea of their relationship. She's a fashion model. He's a photographer for, like, Life or Time type magazines. Like, he goes to a lot of dangerous places with harsh conditions. And, she wants to be part of his life that way, like, go with him. And he says, you're a fashion model. You don't really, you wouldn't like that kind of life. She wants him to work for the fashion magazine that she models for, but he would find that boring. So you kind of have, they're in love with each other, but you kind of have that conflict of interest. And even later on, when they start doing their investigating of this neighbor, actually, I'll get to that, but, so he's pretty well confined. And one last thing on Grace Kelly is, they don't just have her as the female character or like the nagging girlfriend. Like, she's actually she gives her argument. She stands up for herself. Like, she's a strong female character, which for the 50s, I'm sure that was a big deal. And you really, you know, she's just a great character. Sorry, I'm sniffing and shit. And pretty much the whole film is within his apartment, which I thought was a great idea. You don't ever leave the space that Jimmy Stewart is in, and it kind of creates that idea of confinement. You know, you kind of it's an almost 2 hour film, so by the end of it, you're kind of eager to see the outside. And outside his window is this courtyard, and you know he has nowhere to go and nothing to do, so he just watches everyone. And how they made the courtyard is fantastic, because it's really the inside of a studio. And Jimmy Stewart's apartment is on the first floor. Then they cut out the floor, so the courtyard, the outside is the basement. And then they just cut out all the walls in between and created the apartments across the courtyard. And since it's all inside, they had 4 settings for light: morning, afternoon, evening, and night. So, I mean, and the whole movie looks like they're outside. So, I mean, it's just one of those, you know, awesome magic tricks that when you have a master filmmaker like Hitchcock, when you find out how they did it, it's kind of mind-blowing. But, you know, he just starts watching people across the courtyard. Like, you have this one woman, Mrs. Torso, who's a dancer. I guess it's her underwear, but she just kind of dances in her underwear. You have this older couple with a dog, a little dog, who they always put in a basket to go all the way down, to go outside. Then it comes back up. This other couple, well, yeah, this newlywed couple, who they're always closing the blinds, so we know what they're doing. This one elderly woman who's alone, and we kind of get the idea she's longing for love. You know, because even though she's by herself, she does a lot of, like, talking to herself. And one guy who plays the piano, who's actually, in real life, I forget the guy's name, Dave something, creator of Alvin and the Chipmunks. And then we get this other couple, which is Raymond Burr and his wife. And, you know, he almost treats it kind of like a TV. It's like, almost like a TV show. It's like, oh, let's check in and see what they're doing, what he's doing. And it's kind of interesting. Over the course of the film, you're kind of just like, you know, you're kind of doing it with him. And since you're looking through the lens of the binoculars, he makes us voyeurs with him. And then one night, you know, as the film progresses, the Raymond Burr character, he notices he goes out late at night at odd hours. He comes back and he has like a machete and some rope and, you know, kind of sketchy things. He's got an overbearing wife. And then all of a sudden the wife is not there. And he starts to think, I think this guy killed his wife. And he starts kind of obsessing over it. Which even before that, you know, like he has this one woman who's this older, kind of no bullshit, but says whatever she wants kind of woman. She's the one that like massages him and helps him with his physical therapy. And then, of course, Grace Kelly. They're telling him that he's kind of becoming obsessive and peeping in on other people's lives. And he, you know, it's one thing to take pictures, but now you're using binoculars, so you're really invading their privacy. So it almost kind of, it brings the audience in with it. You know, we're we're just as much a peeping Tom as he is, even though he's not a peeping Tom. But that's another reason why that movie, Peeping Tom, was so effective and, freaked a lot of people out. And so he just starts digging and digging. And eventually, he tells his girlfriend, Grace Kelly, what he thinks is going on. And typically, you would have her just kind of being the disagreeing girlfriend. And, then she'd probably go away for the rest of the film. But here she believes him. And she gets a chance to do what she's always wanted to do. And that is, he sends her over. He watches with the binoculars, and she goes over to Raymond Burr's apartment. And this is a great scene because, they're kind of doing this cat and mouse thing where, we can see her through the windows. Raymond Burr comes home. He doesn't know she's in there, but then she's kind of got to tiptoe around him without alerting him. And, then she finally gets out and comes back. And, the way Jimmy Stewart looks at her after that is kind of like he's feeling like, okay, she is adventurous. She really is kind of a wild card. And it sort of brings back a spark for him. Because you kind of get, even though they love each other, they're just so on the opposite ends of what they're into and what their lives are like. And, like, she wants to be more exciting like him, but he thinks she's just like a boring, high heel, pampered model. But then by doing that, it brings them closer together. And also, just the people in the windows, it's, you have the newlywed who are always having sex. They're always embracing each other. You have the old couple who's always arguing. Then you have, Raymond Burr and his wife, overbearing and whatever. Then you have the lonely woman down below who's longing for love. But there's all these different stages and expectations going on. In fact, there's even a part that's funny, and a funny story behind it is there's a part where the older couple with the dog are out on the fire escape with the mattress just kind of laying outside, and then it starts to rain, so they have to get the mattress back inside. And across the way, they were all wearing earpieces so Hitchcock could talk to them. And Miss Torso, the dancer, he called her over, and all he said was, "Watch this," because the couple with the mattress, he gave each one a direction, but told the other one to take their earpiece out, and he gave them opposite directions. So when they're trying to get the mattress inside, they're actually fighting each other, but they don't know why. And he gets to the point, so like the fight you see is real, and when they finally get the mattress inside, the husband like falls through the window, and it's all real because Hitchcock just kind of played chess with them without them knowing. Just one of the brilliant things about Hitchcock, he was a prankster. He would, do shit like that, especially if it made a scene even better. And of course, the police get involved, and that's when Raymond Burr, because the police are over there at his apartment, and Jimmy Stewart's watching with his physical therapist lady. And it's also Grace Kelly is there, and she's pointing. She has her arms behind her back. She's pointing to a wedding ring that she's wearing that she took from his apartment. It's like incriminating evidence. And Raymond Burr notices that she's doing that towards the window, so he kind of looks, and you get this, and like squinting and looking directly at the camera, which would be Jimmy Stewart's vision. So again, it's just one of those things where it makes us as the audience feel like we just got busted, we just got caught. That's a thrilling moment. And you get the final showdown with Jimmy Stewart and Raymond Burr, which is even more technical, neat ideas. Which this is when you kind of start to think about Raymond Burr's side, because the thing about this movie is, okay, it's kind of like a giallo film. Someone who's not in law enforcement trying to solve this murder. He kind of doing the detective work himself. But actually, yeah, I just thought of giallo. When I was thinking about this, I was going to say Silence of the Lambs, because movies like Silence of the Lambs, we see the killer, we see kind of what's going on, and we see what kind of killer person they are. So, like, we already know, and we're kind of waiting for the detective to solve it. But in this, we don't get any exposition. We don't have any knowledge of anything until Jimmy Stewart finds out. We are seeing, hearing, and learning everything at the same time he is. In a way, it's almost like we are Jimmy Stewart, or we're there with him. And, this is, at this time, it's like one of those, he comes in, he's just like, why haven't you turned me in yet? Why did she take that wedding ring? And, you guys have everything that you need. Why haven't you turned me in? And you kind of start to, it's like the first time you don't really look at him as the villain. You kind of start siding with him, like, okay, what's his deal? Because there's even one part where, because he's doing something in the garden shortly after he notices, Jimmy Stewart notices that his wife isn't there anymore. He's out in the garden, doing something. And the dog from upstairs won't stop barking at him and trying to dig at it. And eventually the dog is found dead with his neck broken. And, it's just more things that are kind of leading towards, okay, this guy's got secret. And there is a funny part that his physical therapy lady is talking about, like, oh, I bet he chopped her up with this, and I wonder what he would have done to the bones. And Jimmy Stewart's trying to eat, and eventually he's just like, thought that was funny. On the back, there's these did you know facts, which all the music, speech, and other sounds all come from within the film's world. This is known as diegetic or actual sound. Hitchcock directed the film from Jeff's apartment, Jimmy Stewart's character's name. Whenever he needed to communicate with the other actors, he did so with earpieces. And, when Raymond Burr's over at his apartment, of course, it's all dark. And there was this really smart idea, because this was back with the cameras with the big flash bulbs. Jimmy Stewart's got like a sleeve of bulbs. And when he goes to flash it, he covers his own eyes. So he flashes them. But then even the camera, like, what we see is like this flash of like white, and then it goes red, and then it kind of dissipates, like if you were just like flashed in the eyes. So it kind of blinds Raymond Burr. So there was that nice technical aspect to that trick of the camera to make it, the audience feel like they got blinded. But also having Jimmy Stewart covering his own eyes so that so he can still see. Um, Raymond Burr has Jimmy Stewart hanging out of his window, and okay, they have a tussle, and he's got Stewart over the window, and of course he falls, but police come in time to catch him, and Raymond Burr confesses to everything. Uh, and it even shows what's going on in the other apartments since, like, the lonely lady is now talking to the guy playing the piano. The couple with the dog now has a new dog. The newlyweds are starting to bicker. And as Jimmy Stewart falls asleep, Grace Kelly, she's not wearing a dress. She's wearing jeans, reading a book about the Himalayas. And then she opens up a fashion magazine. So I guess it shows that she's now part of both worlds. And I gotta say, this was a great movie. A great thriller. It has some great features. I mean, it came with an original documentary called Rear Window Ethics. A conversation with screenwriter. Pure Cinema Through the Eyes of the Master, Breaking Barriers, The Sound of Hitchcock, interview excerpts, Masters of Cinema, commentary. I did watch Rear Window Ethics, the original documentary, where filmmakers and, of course, Hitchcock's daughter just talk about the making of the film and its legacy and why it's their favorite. And this really is a film, maybe even more than Psycho, to just if you want to show someone what Hitchcockian is and what Hitchcock is all about, show them this film. His technical prowess, his understanding for what makes suspense, what looks great on screen, wonderful performances, the leading lady being blonde, but also a powerful, smart character. He always casted Jimmy Stewart numerous times when the main character is supposed to be an everyman, where anybody watching can relate to him, because his character is kind of morally ambiguous. He doesn't really have a character, but his performance is great. And he really is like an everyman. Anybody watching can put themselves in his place. And even if they don't want to, they're going to have to, because most of the film is through his eyes. And we see everything he does. And it does a great job with confinement. We never leave his apartment. Just the steps of finding out more and more about that neighbor and that he's a murderer. It's done so well. The suspense is there. It's also one of the rare times, because Hitchcock has said the key to suspense is show the audience that there's a bomb under someone's chair, but don't tell the character. That's how you get suspense. But with this one, we go through everything that Jimmy Stewart does with him. There's not really any scenes like that. The suspense is like when Grace Kelly's in Raymond Burr's apartment and has to get out, or when Raymond Burr catches Jimmy Stewart peeping in on him. I thought this was a great movie. This was, it's right up there with Psycho. I'm always going to have the positive bias towards Psycho. it's going to be hard for these other 13 films to beat Rear Window, but I really enjoyed watching it. I can say I love this movie. Even though I spoiled the whole fucking thing, highly recommend it. Let me know what you guys think of Hitchcock and Rear Window and what films you're looking forward to in this marathon. But anyway, that is Hitchcock's 1954 masterpiece, Rear Window. Thank you for watching.